Everyone needs a summer. You just had to go and get a part-time position at the SCP Foundation, didn't you? Technically, you're massively underqualified, but the employee turnaround at that company is so crazy that they can't exactly turn applicants away. Sure, you may die horribly at the hands of a number of beings, or get terminated for knowing too much, but the pay is decent, and the dental coverage can't be beat. However, you're now staring down the barrel of your first containment breach, and three of the Foundation's most terrifying creatures are on the loose. SCP-173, SCP-096, and the dreaded SCP-682. Talk about a trial by fire. But don't worry, we're here for you, with all the tips, tricks, and techniques you need to get these monsters back in their cells, or better yet, wiped from the face of the earth. So steel yourself, Agent. Things are about to get horrifying. Are you ready to secure, contain, and protect? First up, we have SCP-173, a creature you should really be keeping an eye on. Seriously, if you take your eyes off this spooky statue for even a second, you'll find yourself laying on the ground with a snapped neck. While it might seem like a giant concrete fetus, this beast has left hardcore Class D personnel minds straight from death row in crumpled heaps on the ground. If you were going against this thing in a hand-to-hand battle, or with small arms like a handgun or a standard rifle, you'd better be turning the weapon on yourself before the entity had a chance to get its hands on you. Thankfully, you've got the nigh unlimited resources and state-of-the-art weapons technology afforded to you by the Foundation, so at least you have a fighting chance. But no weapon in the fight against these mysterious beings is greater than knowledge. With know your enemy always being the first rule of conflict, let's get to knowing this nightmarish living statue and see whether there are any cracks in its concrete armor. SCP-173 is a Euclid-class being, meaning that the object has a certain degree of sentience, is difficult to contain, and is often unpredictable due to a lack of our understanding of said object. SCP-173 was moved into the containment site in 1993 and caused a number of brutal deaths since then. The exact origin of the creature and how it's able to move and cause damage is still a mystery, as it never moves while under direct observation. Despite apparently being a sentient creature, Foundation tests indicate that it's constructed from concrete and rebar, with the addition of some Krylon brand spray paint. It also somehow produces blood and feces, despite having no obvious digestive or vascular system. That's just one of the many perplexing things about the biology of this seemingly impossible creature. Typical containment procedures involve confining SCP-173 in a locked container under perpetual direct supervision from at least 3 Foundation personnel. While the observation personnel are relieved from their duties to change shift, at least 2 are required to maintain direct line of sight observation of the creature until the other personnel have safely vacated and locked the chamber. The creature is exceptionally fast and strong. Even the half second it takes to blink is enough to get your neck brutally broken by this snap-happy statue. But these containment procedures apparently weren't enough, and now this wannabe weeping angel is on the loose, snapping its way through every SCP agent who can't maintain constant eye contact. How can you possibly fight a creature you can't look away from for even a fraction of a second? As the creature apparently lacks a conventional vascular system and doesn't appear to have standard carbon-based biological organs, it can't be poisoned or gassed into submission. You could go in guns blazing with heavy artillery weapons like the Metal Storm. This terrifying machine gun, created by an Australian company with American funding for use on the US Navy ships, is a 36-barrel nightmare literally capable of unleashing upwards of 1 million rounds of parabolic hellfire within a minute. Surely this would reduce the SCP-173 to rubble, right? Well, perhaps, unless the initial blast causes you to blink. And if that happens, then the creature is equally likely to dodge your firestorm and snap your neck. To truly beat this SCP, you won't need a hyper-advanced machine gun, but you will need a little help from one of mankind's oldest annoyances, the common housefly. Unlike humans, whose eyes need moisture to function properly, and thus need to blink, flies have perpetually open compound eyes. This not only affords flies a wider field of perception, but the ability to stare forever without blinking. If you release a swarm of these annoying little creatures into a room with SCP-173, it'll essentially be paralyzed by the perpetual gaze of its hundreds of tiny guests. And when this slab of malicious concrete is rendered inert, it can be disposed of the same way you dispose of any troublesome concrete structure, TNT, or C4 charges that could blast this prolific strangler to kingdom come. The resulting rubble could then be simply destroyed in an industrial furnace, leaving no trace. Quite literally, done and dusted. But that murderous piece of modern art is child's play compared to your next opponent, SCP-096, a creature whose chronic shyness could be the death of you, and potentially the death of everyone else too. This is another Euclid, but its combat potential is devastatingly higher than its concrete predecessor. According to all physical descriptions, it's a freakishly tall humanoid creature with white skin devoid of all pigmentation. Its limbs are incredibly long, described by official files as being grossly out of proportion with the rest of the subject's body. Despite having an emaciated, almost malnourished appearance, the creature has seemingly impossible strength and ferocity during combat mode. The creature displays no higher intelligence or reasoning and appears largely docile while unprovoked. Containment procedures dictate that the being must be kept in an airtight steel cube with no surveillance equipment whatsoever. Why? Because this creature becomes doubly dangerous when you see its face. That's right, if anyone anywhere sees SCP-096's face, whether it's physically or in a picture or video, the being enters a state of severe agitation. It will cover its face and begin crying and wailing loudly. When this period of despair ends, the creature begins a vicious rampage after whoever saw it, relentlessly tracking down its prey and eviscerating them, regardless of what's in the way. Witnesses report the creature tearing through doors, walls, and tanks with no effort whatsoever, and experiencing severe physical damage, consisting with the destruction of most of its internal organs, and barely even flinching. The creature's skeletal structure appears almost indestructible, and the only thing that can stop its rampage is the total annihilation of its target. So here's rule number 1 of taking the creature on. You cannot, under any circumstances, see its face. So how can such a thing be achieved? How can you fight something you can't really look at? Well, there is where some key details come into play. While in a combat scenario in which SCP-096 is in attack mode, it has been shown to recover from damage sustained from around 1,050 caliber bullets and sustained fire from an anti-tank gun. It may not have this same level of invulnerability in its docile state. Perhaps you could catch this self-conscious creature off guard by approaching it while using the T7 Thermal Imaging FLIR binocular goggle system. The creature becomes an unstoppable killing machine when you see its face, but through using a thermal imaging system, you'd merely be viewing its abstract heat signature without any real facial definition. In other words, thermal imaging goggles like this would allow you to view SCP-096 without really seeing it. And when the creature kills its target and returns to its docile state, you finally have the opportunity to show it some real firepower. While this SCP is incredibly effective at ground combat, it hasn't shown the same prowess against aerial vehicles, like the devastating MQ-9 Reaper UAV, a remote-controlled drone with ungodly firepower. While this creature may be able to survive an anti-tank gun while in its offensive mode, could it survive a volley of immensely powerful AGM-114 Hellfire 2 anti-armor missiles fired from above while in its docile state? We can't exactly be sure, but it's unlikely that even if it did survive, whatever's left could put up much of a fight. Injecting the skeletal remains with powerful fluoroantimonic acid, much like a spinal tap procedure, might be the final nail in the coffin for this emotionally volatile monster. Even the most powerful acids, however, don't mean much to our third and final combatant. That's right, the utterly horrifying SCP-682, otherwise known by the foreboding nickname, the hard-to-kill reptile. Even this feels like a gross underestimation of the power of this creature. It's the first Keter-class SCP on the list here, meaning anomalies that are exceedingly difficult to contain consistently or reliably, with containment procedures often being extensive and complex. That's right, the two other Euclids were just a warm-up. The Keter class are the big daddies, and SCP-682 is probably the most dangerous and durable of them all. It's an extremely intelligent and ferocious reptile-like creature with unparalleled regenerative ability, reflexes, and strength. It also seems to detest all forms of life in our dimension, and is bent on the destruction of any living being it can get its claws on. The beast is also so adaptable that it's almost impossible to use the same method attack on it twice. Even other SCPs have proved unable to terminate the creature during cross-testing. In order to contain SCP-682, it's perpetually kept in a sealed vat of powerful hydrochloric acid, continually melting its body to prevent it from reaching its full potential. If this thing gets out while you're on duty, you better either prepare your last will and testament or get ready to negotiate a raise. There's no proven way to take on this nigh unkillable beast, so any methods of assault would ultimately just be guesswork and wishful thinking. Still, we believe there are a few potential methods for putting this misanthropic immortal lizard out of commission, even if not all of them are permanent solutions to the problem. The first option involves a lot of creativity and a lot of bullets. Remember earlier in the video when we mentioned the Metal Storm, the experimental Navy machine gun capable of firing 1,000,000 bullets per minute? Such a weapon could be a lot more useful against the fleshy body of SCP-682, coupled with high-intensity flamethrowers, which are illegal under the Geneva Convention, but hey, legality has never stood in the way of the Foundation before. If over 87% of the body is damaged or destroyed, the body will be compromised enough for temporary incapacitation. If you act fast, this is when you have the greatest chance of survival. If the incapacitated body was once again placed in high-intensity acid, this containment unit could then itself be transferred to the payload of an autonomous rocket, much like the kind used to launch satellites into the far reaches of space. If you want to be truly rid of this immortal lizard, firing its desiccated, still-living carcass into the infinity of space is definitely one way you could go about it. Not to mention the fact that given the Foundation has almost unlimited resources, a SpaceX-style private launch would definitely not be out of the financial question. Though, of course, if you want a less complicated solution to your SCP-682 problem, there's another form of rocketry that could come to your aid: nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles. There's no way of stating with 100% certainty that one or even several nuclear ICBMs would actually kill the beast, but there's pretty much nothing else these bad boys can't kill, so you're in there with a chance. If SCP-682 was caught within the hypocenter of the blast, which is anywhere within 1 mile of the direct explosion, there's a good chance that its organic matter would be reduced to atoms by the sheer force of the blast's thermal energy. However, seeing as the SCP Foundation keeps any facility holding SCP-682 around 50 kilometers away from developed human settlements, you wouldn't need to stop there. If anything did remain, the area could be salted with napalm, and the same powerful hydrochloric acid used to contain it. In prior tests, the creature had been damaged to the extent that only around 20% of its biomass remained prior to regeneration. It stands to reason that the most thorough way to ensure the beast's destruction is to strike with such rapid and overwhelming force it doesn't even have time to adapt or repair. In other words, the only way to really kill SCP-682 is absurd, heavy artillery overkill. But that's a small price to pay for not only your life, but the survival of the human race. And of course, your end-of-year company bonus. Check out the rest of our U versus playlist for more exciting battles between